What's going on, guys? So in front of me, you are looking at two of the mowers that we have out here at the property. We have our Toro 2000 HDX Z Master. This is a commercial zero-turn mower. Next to it, we have our brand new XT1 Cub Cadet LT42B. Has a 42-inch cutting deck beneath it. This is your traditional riding lawnmower or riding lawn tractor. This is your traditional zero-turn. Over here we have another zero turn. This is a commercial zero turn as well. This is a big boy. This is the Skag Cheetah 2 with the 61-inch cutting deck. And then of course we have our bad boy tractor over here. But the point of today's video is to talk about the differences, the pros, the cons of each one of these. What's the difference between your traditional lawn tractor versus a zero turn? Now, I know from a pricing perspective, you really can't compare these very well. You know, this is about a $2,400 mower in 2023, 2024. I don't know if the price is going to go up or down next year or not, but I know that this has definitely gone up in price from where it used to be several years ago. This right here is a commercial zero turn, and this mower right here is going to cost between about $7,000 to $10,000. So again, you really can't compare the two. But if you're comparing even a low-cost zero-turn to this Cub Cadet, you really can't compare the two there either as well, because even an entry-model zero-turn is going to cost about $4,000 on the low end. So zero-turns just cost a lot more regardless. I think this comparison is definitely going to be adequate for those of you who may be on the fence between whether or not you should get a traditional lawnmower or a traditional riding lawnmower or a zero turn. So let's talk about that. Hang tight. I'll be right back. All right, so the story behind all of these is that we went out after buying the property and we bought this Skag Cheetah 2. Super commercial mower. The thing is incredibly heavy, incredibly fast, and it's just a beast. It has a 38 horsepower Kawasaki on the back of it, which is about the largest gas engine you can put on one of these mowers. And it's only one step down from the highest end Skag available, which is the Turf Tiger. So this is about as commercial as it gets. This right here was a collaboration. Toro provided this for review and evaluation on the channel, and this has been kind of like the go-to work hog. It has almost 200 hours on it in about a year and a half. The Cheetah has about 40 hours on it, and this thing's brand new, so it probably only has a couple hours on it, but this thing's been an absolute beast. This is just a really great entry into the commercial space for Toro, and when I say that, Toro makes very high-end riding lawnmowers. They make very high-end zero turns. They make all sorts of equipment. This right here is what would be kind of the first step into the commercial series zero turn that they have, which is the 2000 series. Then they have like a 4000 and a 6000 series, and as you step up, of course, the price goes up dramatically. But this one right here is definitely a commercial mower, and there's some attributes to a commercial mower that you're not going to get on the standard, you know, parked in front of Lowe's or Home Depot mower that you might see. And some of those are, you know, a much higher end fabricated deck. So this deck is super thick. You can see that bullnose on the front of it as well, which just helps in case you hit roots or you hit things that are really hard that might traditionally bend a deck. Whereas you look at the Cub Cadet, this has a stamped deck. I know that they make a series of this. I think if you go up to the next level, that has a fabricated deck. But this specific one is a stamped deck, very entry level, very thin material. Again, this is probably, and I don't know exactly, I'm guessing between maybe 18 to 20 gauge in terms of the thickness of the material there, whereas this one's like a 10 and a 7 gauge. It's just super thick. So this is designed for constant, I'm not going to say abuse, but constant use for in a commercial environment where you might be hitting things not intentionally. Perhaps you have a crew who might take less than the best care of the equipment you're letting them use, and that's why you need stuff like this on a commercial mower. Out here on this property, you absolutely need a commercial mower. I would not expect something like this to last very long out here. And it's not so much because of the amount of grass that you're going to be mowing, but from a durability standpoint, the yard out here is super bumpy, mainly because of the pocket gophers. So they make a hole about a foot underground. That's about 3 to 4 inches in diameter, sometimes greater than that, and it spreads out like veins everywhere. And the gophers basically make these underground tunnels that eventually collapse, and they leave a divot in the ground in the form of a tunnel that can really wear out equipment. And you find that out very quickly. If you are using the Toro, the suspension platform that's right here is great if you're going at slower speeds, but if you're going at faster speeds, it almost wants to buck you off. That's how bumpy it gets. That's where the Skag excels a little bit because of the suspension deck that it has, the platform right there. It's stiffer, so when you hit those bigger bumps at faster speeds or higher speeds, you don't feel it quite as much. But both of them perform well out here. Something like this, I don't know how well it would hold up over time. A lot of folks who commented on the video where I introduced this basically said it's a great mower, it should last a good amount of time, but they don't do well over excessively bumpy conditions. And I could kind of see where certain parts might start rattling apart. Like even the cowling here, it's just designed to be a residential mower. I mean, it's not really designed to have any type of true commercial application. Even though I believe if the grass was, or if the ground was completely smooth, it would probably hold up pretty well as long as you change out the things that you need to change out, your oil, your blades, maybe bushings or bearings, things that might eventually wear out over time. But the point of this video, again, is to talk about really the comparison if you need a zero turn or a lawn tractor. So let's dive into that. So a zero turn is the most maneuverable style mower, riding lawnmower that you can buy. Basically because of what its name is, zero turn. You can literally sit in one spot and you can just turn in a circle if you want to, which makes it really nice if you want to get around trees, if you need to get around obstacles and things like that. It also makes it really nice if you want to be able to just go back and forth like this, because you can get to the end, spin, come back. Now, that feature is also kind of a negative, because if you do that, you're going to tear up your yard. Mainly because when you do a zero turn, one tire really isn't moving, or it might even be rotating in the opposite direction. And if that's the case, you end up with these divots in the ground where you've torn up the ground every time you make a turn, or even if you just make a sharp turn. So it's not just going back and forth like this. If you're just going around like that, you can still do the same thing if you're making a sharp turn, because one tire is not moving, it's dragging and possibly even spinning backwards, and that can tear up your yard. So you have to be really careful. We've had to kind of come up with ways of avoiding that out here, where you'll go and then you'll make a wide turn and then you'll come back, make another wide turn and come back, or you'll go and then you'll back up and then go forward to continue the turn. And zero turns are really good at mowing large properties fast because they're quick, and because of that zero turn function, you don't spend a lot of time, if you don't want to, having to make wide turns to execute that next path that you're going to be mowing. Now, lawn tractors, you don't necessarily have to deal with that, because just like a vehicle, you're not going to be able to make a zero turn, right? You're going to have to make kind of an arching turn. And when you do that in a mower like this, you're less likely to damage your yard. But not to say you can't make those same types of turns on a zero turn, right? I can make a wider turn on a zero turn if I want to. It's not difficult at all. It's just not taking advantage of the fact that you can zero turn with a zero turn, if that makes sense. Okay, so another difference between the two is how close you can get to things. Now, you sit further forward on a zero turn, so your platform is quite a bit further forward versus sitting at the very back of a lawn tractor. But because you have these big casters out in front of you, you don't necessarily have the ability to get closer to things. Now, what I like about the zero turn is that I can get under things better than I can get with the tractor. For instance, if I have a low branch right here, I can get the whole front of it under and I can mow in that space, versus the tractor, which has more height to it up here, and it might cause me to actually hit whatever that object is. But for the most part, the difference there isn't that extreme unless you have a lot of crazy trees. Like we have a lot of live oaks and mesquite trees, and they tend to have awkward branches that kind of swoop down. So it's a benefit out here for this, but I think for most folks, this would probably be fine in that arena. In terms of cut quality, they're honestly about the same. You can't really compare these two head to head because this has such a narrower deck than this one, right? This is a 62-inch deck. That's a 42-inch deck. So this is a significantly wider deck, and I'm cutting far more grass in one swoop than I would be with that. But if I had a much wider deck on that, I believe the cut would probably be about the same. This is another area where you have to also be careful when you compare a consumer or a residential grade product to a commercial grade. The blades are much thicker on this, they spin a lot faster, and they're designed to be able to cut a lot more before wearing out and to be able to cut thicker, taller grass. But this one still cuts very well from a cut quality perspective if you're using it the way it's intended to be used, which is going to be your more, normal lawns that you might have in front of your home. This one, again, can cut that tall ranch grass that we get out here, the hay that typically other mowers might struggle with. And I think for the most part, you're not going to be cutting that type of grass with this mower. Now, I'm going to say the single biggest advantage you have with something like this versus this is the fact that because this is a zero turn, you have these two levers that you pull in over your lap and you're articulating them together. Now, if you've operated these enough, or if you're going over relatively long straight stretches, you can just put one hand right here in the middle and you can typically move it the way you want it to move, and you can do what you need to do, but it's nowhere near as convenient as a steering wheel. So the steering wheel makes this just kind of game-changing in the sense of just convenience. It's a far more pleasant experience when you just only need to put one hand on a steering wheel. You can multitask to some degree. You can have an adult beverage on the side here, and you can be able to use the other hand, whereas on a zero turn, you kind of can, but the faster you go, the more difficult it is to control with just one hand. Now, I know a lot of people do. On the Skag over here, the handles actually come in much closer together, so they almost touch, right? And I can easily grab this and I can maneuver this, or maneuver both levers with one hand, unless I'm coming up to a turn. If it's a big turn, you can kind of do it sometimes, but I think almost anybody who does that knows that it's not the most precise form of turning when you have a zero turn. You really want to use both hands if you have a zero turn. But the steering wheel on the Cub Cadet just makes it so nice if you're just going to be driving this around to mow, and you don't have to worry about having to have two hands on the controls. Another nice feature on the tractor is your ability to lower the blade a little bit easier. I'm going to say it's a little bit more seamless. To lower the deck, all I really have to do is grab this handle, lower it to whatever height I want to cut the grass, and that's it. Super, super simple. On the zero turn over here, you have to press this lever in, and then it releases whenever you push this lever out, and then you drop the blade down to, or the deck down to whatever height you want to mow at. Now, still not difficult, but this deck is super, super heavy, so it's definitely a lot more effort to get this lowered to where you want it versus this. Now, if I'm going to be driving over a scenario where, let's say I'm coming up to a gopher mound, and I want to lift the deck up so I don't hit it, this one is far, far more difficult to do that with because of the weight and what you have to do, right? You have to really press that pedal to get it up. On this one, I can keep one hand on the steering wheel. I simply grab this, and I can raise or lower the deck very, very quickly. And I think part of the reason why this one is so simple is because it's a very lightweight stamped deck versus a really huge, heavy fabricated deck that is, probably 12 times the weight of this one. So that's going to be your biggest difference there. If this deck was the size of this one and it was stamped and it was, super lightweight, probably similar to what you might pick up at Lowe's or Home Depot, then the effort to lift the deck would probably be a lot less. Now, the Skag, on the other hand, this deck is absolutely insanely heavy, and whenever you're pressing this foot lever down right here to lift up the deck, you actually have to apply quite a bit of pressure. It's very, very heavy, and I would argue to say that this deck probably weighs a couple 100 pounds more than the deck on the Toro. So the heavier the deck, the more effort, of course, it's going to take to lift or lower the deck, whereas on a basic lawn tractor like this, it's pretty dang simple to lift or lower the deck. So again, it's basically because this is more of a residential or consumer mower that the deck is so easy to lift or lower. Now, in terms of going forward and backward, there's a lot of difference here, right? On a zero turn, you push the levers forward, pull the levers back. It's kind of like driving a tank. On this, you have your typical gas pedal, and then you have a reverse pedal. So forward and back right there, and you're moving or reversing. Super, super simple. It's very intuitive, super easy for just about anybody to get on one of these and drive them. whereas a zero turn is definitely going to take a little bit more finesse and a little bit more skill, because you can actually hurt yourself a lot easier on a zero turn, in my opinion, than you can a lawn tractor. Mainly because a lot of times when you're doing things, you're maneuvering, you can easily kind of jerk the zero turn in a direction or forward or backward in a way you might not have been anticipating. Just check out some of the crazy YouTube videos on that. Whereas on a lawn tractor, your controls are a lot more predictable, and you have more, I guess you can use this with more finesse in an easier way. You have to finesse the controls here. This just kind of has finesse built into it because it's more intuitive to what people are used to using whenever they're driving around. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, to compare this fairly, you probably either need to have a much higher end tractor to compare against the mower, or you'd have to have a much lower end zero turn to compare against this mower. But at the end of the day, a zero turn is a zero turn and a tractor is a tractor, and both of these perform their functions really well. I don't feel any issues with power on this. 19 horsepower Briggs & Stratton. That has like a 24 horsepower Kawasaki, 38 horsepower Kawasaki on this one. The other cool thing, though, I do like about the Toro, and possibly other zero turns, is the fact that you can attach things to it. Like, you can attach your weed eater holder on the side, or buckets and things like that. I've done the same thing here, where I have a bucket attached to the front, I have the weed eater attached to the side right there, so I can bring all my tools out with me, which is really nice, because when you're way at the front of the property or way at the back of the property and you need to mow around something, it's really nice to be able to just hop off the tractor, have the equipment with you that you need without worrying about having to run back to it or come back later. On the tractor, I don't know how you would attach anything like that. I don't know how you'd be able to really bring anything with you unless you hauled it behind you on a cart, which would not be ideal when you're mowing the grass. But you know, overall, at the end of the day, the reason why we got this is because my father-in-law loves to mow grass. He does not feel comfortable on a zero turn. He's driven these before, he's used these before, and he ultimately wanted to use something that was more comfortable and safer for him. And if you feel safe and comfortable using something, you're going to use it more and you're going to enjoy using it. So that's the reason why we picked this up from Tractor Supply. Not a sponsored product. We paid for this one, and he loves it. He uses it all the time for all sorts of different tasks. Anyways, guys, I sure hope you've enjoyed this video. If you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon.